Last week, I talked about traditions of sociology as it emerged and developed in the world, especially its first emergence in England, in France, Germany, United States, and how each of them constituted different traditions, and contemporary sociologists, how they drove from these traditions to develop their own synthetic approaches, theories. But we also looked at other countries, like, for example, Indian sociology, and its problems being a later comer into modernization, modernization starting in the West, or industrialization, modernization, development of capitalism, and the world system emerging and spreading to the rest of the world. And all that took place in Europe and America. And then it expanded into India, into China, into Africa, rest of the world. And as the new world, the new type of society emerged and expanded to the rest of the world, its science also, its science as sociology also emerged and developed. Okay, now that was last week. Now this week, I am going to go into development of sociology in Turkey as a general introduction. And then starting next week, we will cover two sociologists each week. Now, the first, I will do today's course by showing you the articles I will be covering, each of them, and I will summarize them, and I will proceed that way. These are articles on development of sociology in Turkey. Now, the first article is written in 1936. In 1936, by Niyazi Berkes, when he was in Istanbul University, and then later he went to America, to University of Chicago, and then later he came towards the end of 30s, the beginning of 40s, he was in Ankara University. We will talk about that, but today I am going to talk only about this article where he talks about sociology in Turkey. Now, let me first share with you this his article. Just I would like to show it to you. Sociology in Turkey. I think it is this one. Okay, let me see whether that is the one. Yes. You see here, you can enlarge it. We can enlarge it a little bit like this. And you see that Sociology in Turkey, this is the title, Niyazi Berkes. Now, American Journal of Sociology, which is one of the oldest sociology journals, which is published by University of Chicago Press. Now, in this article, Niyazi Berkes is talking about the beginnings of sociology Okay, now sociology, he says, now this paragraph here, you see it, I think, yes, it says, social sciences have developed in Turkey largely in response to questions arising in connection with the crises in the social life of the nation. To understand and to evaluate the peculiarities of Turkish social thought, the genesis of these questions and the course they followed should be noted. So now in the next paragraph, he notes that the rise of industrial democratic societies in Europe, and as I said a few minutes ago, and its expansion from Western Europe towards Eastern Europe and to Ottoman Empire. And in Ottoman Empire consisting of a large number of religious and linguistic groups, and he says, still being a theocratic monarchy dominated by a dynasty and religion of Islam. Okay, now, and then in the third paragraph, starting from the third paragraph, he goes into how in Ottoman Empire, what kind of thought about society, about state, about human beings there were. So he goes back to Farabi. Now, Farabi is a Muslim Turkish, I will not say social scientist, but I will say philosopher. But we can also say maybe, yes, scientist, because these people that lived during 9th and 10th centuries, his birth is 870 and his death is 950. So the end of 9th century and up to the middle of 10th century he lived. Now the thinkers at that time, Farabi, Ibn Sina, Ibn Rushd, now these thinkers were influenced by Hellenistic, ancient Greek philosophy of Plato and especially Aristotle. Aristotle's books were translated into Arabic around 8th century. So they were already in 9th century. So Farabi were reading them and adopting that philosophical analysis into the Islamic society that is flourishing, that is emerging and developing. Now, he has this book, Medinetil Fazla. And this book, I read actually myself, but of course into translation into English. It is translated as The Virtuous City. The Virtuous City. As you can see here, the Virtuous City. Now, in this virtuous city, his influence from Aristotle, and you know that Aristotle thinks of human beings as political animals, and that's what he states in this virtuous city. Actually, he goes into analysis of neighborhoods, the household, of course, the villages, and then he comes to Medina. Medina in Arabic is city, the city. And how that the existing cities that he observed, he describes them. And then he goes into a normative, ethical, moral construction of an ideal city, a utopia, if you like. Now, Now, obviously, this is he is influenced by Plato and Plato's book, The Republic. In The Republic, Plato develops an ideal state, an ideal society. So that's what Farabi does too. Now, I will not go into details of it, but from the point of view of Ottoman thinkers, especially after 18th and 19th centuries, when Ottoman society and state started experiencing crises as Western capitalism expanded to the lands of Ottoman state, Ottoman Empire. Of course, they used first their own tradition. And what were in the tradition? Yes, Farabi was one of them. But more than Farabi, and more sociological one, perhaps, an early sociologist, even before the sociology emerged in Europe, although its name was not sociology, it was history. History is history and political science are two social sciences that preceded economics as a science and sociology as a science. These two, and it's Ibn Khaldun. Now, Ibn Khaldun lived in actually he goes into that somewhere here, but let me talk now from my own notes, and let me send this article away so that you will see me until I bring another article. But Ibn Khaldun, maybe in the introductory course or in history of sociology first semester, you've encountered Ibn Khaldun. Now, Ibn Khaldun lived how many centuries later? 4 centuries later, 1332 birth and 1406 his death. So he lived 14th century mostly, 2/3 of 14th century and the beginning of 15th century. Now, and he wrote this Prolofiration, Mukaddima. It is actually an introduction to his 5-volume history of civilizations, history of societies. But in this Prolofiration, in this introduction, which is a voluminous book, he gives information about dynamics of societies, how the center and periphery. Actually, there is a, as we will see later, for example, Sherif Mardin has this center periphery theory. Ibn Khaldun has a similar center periphery theory, where centers are the cities and where states are located, and where the ulama, the religious people, the administrators, and of course the rulers are there. And then in the periphery are the agriculturalists and nomads. Okay, now Ibn Khaldun influenced other historians, political scientists in Ottoman Empire. For example, one of them, again, I read one of his Risale, one of his papers, a large paper, Koçu Bey. Koçu Bey lived in now 17th century. We don't know his birth date, but he died in 1650, so 17th century. And he wrote a paper on the basis of his observations, why Ottoman state is not as strong as it was, say, in previous century. In 16th century, the time of magnificent Süleyman, Kanuni Sultan Süleyman, Ottoman state, Ottoman society was dynamic one, and it was expanding. But in the next century, in 16th century, and especially by the middle of 17th century, it is good. No, by the end, actually, the end of in 1699 and later in 1715 in Vienna, there are defeats of Ottoman armies, and he says he has this circle of justice. He says, if the Sultan is just in a country, then there will be peace, and there will be producers and an abundance of production from which the Sultan will get the surplus and will have a strong army. And when the state has a strong army, the enemies cannot defeat them, and the Sultan can be a just Sultan, and a just Sultan will provide peace. And this is a circle. This is a circle. Now, Koçu Bey observed disturbance of this circle and why it's being disturbed, how it can be remedied, etc., etc. And then, again, in the same century, in 17th century, Katip Çelebi is more of a follower of Ibn Haldun as a historian, and Naima again in 17th century. And there is, as you see, 17th century, the beginning of the crisis of the Ottoman Empire, provoked Ottoman thinkers to think about the state of the state, the situation of the state, and the villages, the towns, agriculture, industry, commerce, etc., the army, the organizations, other organizations. And then we shift to 19th century. Now, for example, Ahmet Cevdet Pasha. Ahmet Cevdet Pasha was born in 1822 and died in 1895. Now, a 19th century person. Actually, it is the time that Auguste Comte in France is writing. Saint-Simon already gave way to Auguste Comte. Now, Ahmet Cevdet Pasha is the author of Mübeccel, which is a combination of Sharia laws, regulations, and a modern legal codes, a combination. And he considered himself a follower of Ibn Haldun on the one hand, and other Islamic history and Islamic thought, and also being influenced from Western thought. Now, Ahmet Rıza Bey mentions directly Auguste Comte, and he's considered as the one who introduced Auguste Comte's positivist sociology into Ottoman Empire. Now, he lived in the second half of 19th century and the beginnings of 20th century, from 1858 to 1930. Now, he was a member of İttihat Terakki, Union and Progress, which came to power in 1908, as you know from your history of social structure of Turkey, from social structure of Turkey, you know, Union and Progress Party, when second constitutional monarchy is being announced, is the rule. Around the same time, there's another thinker, political thinker, historian, sociologist, we can call them. Actually, they are already in the book that I showed you, the collection, the articles, chapters on sociologists in Turkey. Now, there are chapters on them in this book, in Çağatay, now what is his name? Çağatay Özdemir, Türkiye'de Sociology. Remember, I showed it to you previously. For example, Sait Halim Pasha has a book. The title of the book is Buhran-ı İçtimaimiz. Buhran-ı İçtimaimiz. İçtimai, society. Buhran, crisis. Crisis of our society. Crisis. From 17th century onward, Ottoman society, Ottoman state is actually in crisis. Now, in 19th century, from the beginning of 19th century, there are reforms and reforms and reforms. Anyway, there are others, for example, Bedi Nuri, he writes in the journal, in the Ottoman journal, Umumu İktisadiye ve İçtimaiye. Now, this general economics and sociology, İçtimaiye, sociology. These are the beginnings of social thought in Turkey. And then Ziya Gökalp, again, the second half of 19th century, from 1876 to 1924. Now, next week, we will take him up and study him in detail. Now, this is starting from Niyazi Berkes's 1936 article, Sociology in Turkey. I made it. I brought it up to date. But I would like to go to another article from which I will come to an article that I have written in 1986. But before that, let me show an article again on Turkish sociology, history of Turkish sociology, by Mübeccel Kıray. Now, it is, I will show it from here. Now, let me see. It is this one. Now, it is published in International Social Science Journal in 1979. I hope you will see this. Okay, here it is. Now, the title is Teaching in Developing Countries. Teaching in developing, but teaching of sociology in developing countries, the case of Turkey. Now, in this article, Mübeccel Kıray argues, now she has a thesis. She says that every society has a type of knowledge specific to that type of society. So in pre-modern societies, it was history, political science, theology, religion as a whole, religious sciences. But after the Industrial Revolution and democratic revolution and the emergence of capitalism, a new knowledge of society is being required, and hence that became developed. But Mübeccel Kıray makes a distinction between previous philosophies and empirical research-based social science. She thinks that the contemporary urban, industrial, modern societies needs research-based field studies, surveys. So she's for studying society from a deterministic, functionalist way by gathering data from the field. Now, she considers that just general thinking about society without empirical data gathering is pre-science, before the period before science. So the humanistic sociology or humanistic social sciences, which she considers as speculative and scholastic. So instead of that, research in the field. Okay, now let me send this away and let me continue with another approach. The approach that I took in the next article is Çiğdem Kağıtçıbaşı. Now, together with Mübeccel Kıray and Çiğdem Kağıtçıbaşı and others, actually, we had in 1985 development of social sciences in Turkey, where I presented the article that I will come in a minute, or let me come to it so that I will show it to you. Now, let me go to it again. I am showing you so that you will go into the content part of this course, and you will go into these articles yourself. Okay, now let me see which one. Now this one. Okay. Okay, here it is. You see development of social science research in Turkey, published in 1986, but actually the symposium was in 1985, and the title of my article, or my paper actually, my paper was Sociological Research in Turkey, from Compartmentalization to Differentiation and Proliferation. Okay, now I start this article with, now, first, Kıray's, by summarizing Kıray's 1979 article, which I just summarized, and 1985 presentation in the same conference that we were, where, as I said, she is rejecting speculative, humanistic, and scholastic approaches in social sciences, and defending an empirical, research-based social science, sociology. And then I give reference to another sociologist, Doğan Ergun, again, 1985 publication this time. Now, Doğan Ergun observes that in Turkish sociology during 70s and 80s, there is an ultra-empirical, narrow, experimental, and behavioristic techniques are being used in sociology, and hence sociology turned into a bunch of data, narrow scope, restricted field study, whereas he says there should be we should be able to see the general, the total, the whole of the. We should have a holistic holistic methodological approach and a holistic theoretical approach to have a real scientific knowledge of society. So Kıray is criticizing philosophical, speculative, scholastic, humanistic, pre-empirical, pre-research type of social sciences. Ergun is criticizing empirical but narrow empirical and behavioristic type data gathering without a holistic methodology and theory. Now, for this article, for this paper, I use one more approach, that is a social psychologist, Çiğdem Kağıtçıbaşı. Again, in the same conference, she presented a paper on development of social psychology in Turkey, where she talked about different stages of development of social psychology or sociology. I adopted it actually to sociology. She says that at the first stage, there is a more imitative type of social science. When we think of 19th century, the second half of 19th century, early 20th century. And then in the second stage, there develops a social science which is more in tune with sociocultural realities of the country. And in the third stage, it becomes more universal. Now, thinking that, of course, there is not a unilinear evolutionary development like this in sociology, but instead of looking as a whole, I wanted to go into details, and I tried to see to show how in each sub-branch of sociology, like rural sociology, urban sociology, political sociology, sociology of family, each of them, how it went from compartmentalization to differentiation. Now, why do I qualify Turkish sociology or sociology in Turkey as compartmentalized? Because during 80s and in the previous decades, I observed that there are, as we will see today in this lecture, in sociology, there were two dominant approaches. One in Istanbul sociology, one in the faculty of literature, the other in the faculty of economics. There are two of them there, but they are similar to each other. But still, as we will see next in the course of the weeks, we will see similarities and differences, but a totally different maybe I shouldn't say totally different, because still it is sociology, but a different approach to sociology developed in the end of 30s and 40s in Ankara University. Ankara University Language, History and Geography faculty of Ankara University, where there was a Department of Social Sciences, within which there was psychology, sociology, and philosophy. As we will see again in the following weeks, unfortunately, in 1947-48, the sociologists there, Niyazi, Berkes, and Behice Boran, and others, they were fired from there. We will come to that. Okay. Now that legacy, that division between Istanbul and Ankara, continued in the following years as sociology departments opened in Middle East Technical University, in Hacettepe University, in Izmir. At the time that I was writing this paper, I don't know, there were not very many sociology departments, but still I was able to observe a kind of compartmentalization, each department being within itself. But even in the same department, each sociologist being in her own world, a kind of seclusion into mini worlds, instead of collaborating, having dialogue, discussions, criticisms, because science develops through criticism, mutual criticism, and criticism as based on empirical findings. On the basis of empirical findings, you try to refute, you try to falsify the hypotheses that are developed from from various theories. Okay, now I will send this article away, and I will go to an article that actually applied this article, this paper of mine, into real life. They gathered from 7 departments from 7 universities. Okay, let me bring that now. Okay, it is Aytül Kasapoğlu is the, okay, here is the one who published this article. Now, the name of the, now you see it. Okay, let me make it larger so that you will see it better. Now, in my paper, there were all these subfields of sociology, as a theory and method of sociology, applied sociology, family sociology, religion, economic sociology, politics, etc., etc., etc. Now, they collected all the articles published by Ankara University, Istanbul University, sociology departments in Ankara, in Istanbul, Mimar Sinan, Boğaziçi, METÜ, Ege, Aegean, and Hacettepe. And in each subfield, how these articles are being distributed. For example, in terms of theory and method, there were 482 publications. Now, 23 or 24% of them was published by Sociology department in Middle East Technical University, and the next one was Mimar Sinan, Sociology department in Mimar Sinan with 18%, followed by Istanbul, etc. Let's look at, for example, family. Now, again, now in many of these fields, as Aytül Kasapoğlu also notes as a finding, Department of Sociology in Middle East Technical University has most of them, except in few, for example, in which one, rather than in Sociology of Health, for example, Ankara University has 51% of all publications in Sociology of Health. Or for example, what else? What else? Other universities, for example, art and culture, obviously, Sociology of Art and Culture. Mimar Sinan has most, 34%. But in other fields, for example, Sociology of Religion, Middle East Technical University has 58%, 59% of all the articles. In political sociology, 40%, 40.6%. In stratification, 48%. You see this. I mean, you can read the article, the beginning of it, and the other parts of it, actually. Now, let me see from here already. Not this one. Now, where is it? Okay, this one. Now, let me go back to the beginning of the article. The study of sociology in Turkish higher education, published in 2005 in International Education Journal. You see that here. Okay. Now, let me send this to, and let me continue. After this article, I have written an article. Actually, this article's English version, but it is titled. Now, let me share that again. Let me show that to you again from here. Yes, from here, and this way. Now, let me see. This one. Now, as you see here, let me make it larger. Turkish sociology, from compartmentalization to indigenization and internationalization. Now, why did I talk about indigenization and internationalization? Because in the literature around that time, some studies emerged about sociology in the world. And they started, for example, I give references here. Do you see them? About Indian sociology, think about Indian sociology, or Sabah and Ghazala about Arab sociology. And so there are some sociological traditions in non-Western countries, on the one hand, or they observed that in non-Western countries, sociology achieved some degree of substantive methodological and theoretical indigenization. Whereas in Western societies, sociology started being internationalized. Now, this article by Tiryakian. Now, all of them are published in 1986, the same year that my previous paper was being published. In the world, these are being published, and hence I wanted to see what is this indigenization and internationalization, and two opposite directions of development of Western sociology and non-Western sociology. Now, what are the what could be the problems of this type of approach? Now, in order to go into this, I remembered a paper that I delivered in the 75th anniversary of the establishment of sociology department in Istanbul University by Ziya Gökalp. Now, 75th year. Now, it is being established in 1913. So, after 75 years, it was again during 80s. Now, in that conference, let me send this away. I said that this internationalization, indigenization debate, issue, paradox, problem, cannot be solved going in one way. Now, indigenization in itself, that is being local, being like the Indian sociology crisis. Indian sociologists were talking about crisis of sociology in India because there were sociologies publishing in local languages, in state languages, in national language, and Western languages. Now, all those together, and this Indian sociologist's remedy was that now these should have a dialogue. And in this conference in Istanbul University, I also argued that indigenized local sociologies or national sociologies cannot continuously go in the national and local direction, losing comparative perspective. That is, losing the perspective of sociological traditions and internationalization of sociology at the world scale. So we should be able to go to the local level and to the international level, and we should go from one to other. And this going from one to the other helps us to understand local problems, local sociocultural issues, as we will be able to discover the grounded theory there. But this grounded theory, by going to the international comparative sociological perspectives, we will be able to bring it to a more universal perspective. So we should be able to go in between the particular local and the global, the universal. But one of the sociologists, or some of the sociologists who defend indigenized sociology, who defend a local cultural sociology, if you are going to come back to the local, why should we go to the international? They objected to me. But this is a dialogue, a debate, a going beyond compartmentalization, and that is what I would like to do, actually. Now, in the next article that I will show you, I actually try to typologize, develop a typology of sociologists in Turkey, and I think that it is also applicable to other non-Western countries. Now, let me first share with you that article again from here. Now, where it is? Here it is. The challenge. Okay, the title is The Challenge of Glocal Complexity. Glocal complexity. Now, glocal is a combination of global and local. Now, I translated that into Turkish in two ways. One is Q-yerel, where local is more dominant, küresel, Q, only Q, and küreyel, where global is more dominant and local is less so. But it is, so obviously Glocal is in between local and global. And I argue in this article that, in the previous article, it was between local and international. No, it was between indigenous, local indigenous, and international. Now it is in between local and global by developing a Glocal approach, which combines global and local. So this here I argue and I go into an analysis of developments in sociology, and then I go. Okay, now let me send this. I showed to you already this article. Let me go to my own notes now, where in this article that I showed to you, actually in a previous article, I developed a typology of universities in Turkey, which was a publication in 2002, on the basis of language of the university, whether it is Turkish or non-Turkish, mostly English, as you know. There are few German and French teaching universities in Turkey. Second, whether the university is state university or private or foundational vakıf university. And thirdly, whether the orientation of the university as a whole is local, national, or international. Now, when you have three variables like this, two values in the first one, language, Turkish, non-Turkish, two values in the second variable, state, vakıf, and three variables in the third one, local, national, international, there will be 12 cells in the table, 12 cells. But some of the cells are empty. But as a whole, I tried to qualify from the type of the university to the type of the social scientist. So there are subtypes, but I developed global type of social scientist, local type of social scientist, and Glocal type of social scientist. Now let me briefly go into each of them, what distinguishes each of them. Now, completely global social scientist studies or does research and publications on the basis of first country, the Western country markets, first world markets, I say. The perspective adopted for looking at her own society is first world perspective. She knows one foreign language very well. She might have been educated in one of the countries, Western countries, of one or more levels of education. There are some social scientists who had their secondary, undergraduate, and graduate educations in America or England. So in foreign language institutions. and they publish in high impact journals, Western journals. And actually, in the universities, university policies, policies of the universities are actually pushing social scientists in this direction, that they will be able to publish in in best journals. Now, local type is in the other pole. Now, they usually, now there are two types here. Some of them, like in Istanbul University, or at least when I was writing this article, I say the second type, this local type, the first type of the local type, works in one of the older metropolitan universities, knows national language, a regional language such as Arabic or Ottoman, and a Western language. She claims that basic concepts of indigenous social science should be adequate to capture historical, cultural differences of Eastern or Islamic societies. So she focuses on Eastern Islamic societies, tries to develop concepts that will be able to capture them. She advocates indigenization. She global type of social science more very strongly, actually. But unfortunately, I say these types of scholars with historical and cultural depth are becoming rarer, and hence there is a second type of the local type of social scientist. This social scientist works in universities that are opened in various provinces, publishes only in the national language, does not know a foreign language, does not know like Arabic or Persian or Kurdish languages. So they usually either work on the basis of translations of Western books and articles, and tries to gather some empirical data, but the research and theory synthesis is not very good. So this global type, the local, two types of the local. Now, third type, Glocal, as I said, as I already said at the beginning while introducing this paper, now this type of social scientist is concerned both global universal frameworks and local, national, regional context. The approach adopted by the researchers in this category are aware that global flows and networks are involved in the production and reproduction of local communities. We cannot study local communities with only indigenized framework, because the indigenous local communities, which are supposed to be indigenous, are already influenced by the local, by the first world, by the expanding capitalism, by the expanding modernity. We cannot find completely indigenous societies, even in remote corners of Earth, of the globe. In Turkey, which is very close to West, where industrial, urban, capitalist, new type of society and state expanded into, and to the east of Turkey, there is Arabic, Persian, Indian, Chinese, Japanese on the east. So it is in the middle. So in a country like Turkey, it is inevitable that social scientists should be global. That is what I argue in this. Anyway, I will let me continue with my other material. Now, actually, the next material that I would like to talk with you before the end of this session is a work, a PhD thesis, actually, a PhD thesis submitted to Department of Sociology of Middle East Technical University, and the title of this thesis. Now, let me share it first. Let me show it to you. Again, let me go here and from here, and let me find it here. Okay. Now, Turkish sociology, you see it. Let me, okay, Turkish sociology in a sociology of knowledge perspective. The double bind of survival and identity. The double bind of survival and identity. So this is a PhD thesis submitted in 2014. And it is indeed a very good thesis. Mühürdaroğl penetrated the problem of sociology in Turkey. Now, what I call compartmentalization is actually in between the two. Let me show you the abstract here. Actually, let's read the abstract together. Now, the survival and identity. Yes, now, survival and identity. Now, survival, you know, how to continue to live. Identity is your who you are. Okay, now, as a society, as a culture, as a state, on the one hand, Ottoman Empire, Ottoman society, and later Turkish society has to adopt for survival the technology, the science of the West, because West is expanding to the rest of the world with a new type of knowledge, scientific knowledge and technology. And if you do not adopt it, if you are not part of it, you are going to be colonized. You are going to be absorbed into Western colonial empires, like India was done, China to an extent. Turkey avoided that until First World War, but unfortunately, at the end of the First World War, losing the war, Turkey started to being lands of Ottoman Empire, and hence Turkey being occupied by the victorious countries. So survival is coming to an end. Survival. So what is to be done in order to survive? One has to use the technology and the organization, the type of the organization. So under the leadership of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, as you know, going from Istanbul to Erzurum, and starting from there coming to Ankara and using telegram, a technology, and organizing the parts of Turkey that are not being occupied yet, although the occupation is continuing. So by using Western technology and the type of organization and knowledge, Mustafa Kemal and his friends, and under the leadership of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk and the group, were able to have expel the occupiers and establish a republic and a nation state similar to Western nation state. So survival, and this is survival. Now let me, after this, let me read this Mühürdaroğlu's abstract, what he talks in this thesis, throughout the thesis. Now he says, Ottoman Turkish modernization discourse, and this is Foucauldian concept of discourse. There are variations of, is structured on the basis of a double bind between survival and identity, which had emerged as a result of the belief that a break had taken place in the Ottoman Empire in the unity between methods of governing and the qualities with which Ottomans defined themselves. So the methods of governing became Western, became scientific, became technological. The methods of governing the country, managing the affairs of the society, cannot be done as it was done as I reviewed Koçu Bey, for example. Koçu Bey and others, Naima, they were advising to go back to the golden time of Ottoman Empire, to the 16th century. But it is not possible to go back to the golden era of Ottoman Empire. So the way of governing the society should adopt the new technology, the new methods of organization. Now, governing debates on the disruption of this unity had been conducted in a period when linear conception of history became predominant framework for understanding historical process. As a result, categories of survival and identity were regarded as two dichotomous terms, which were discussed with reference to other dichotomies, East and West, traditional and modern. So survival coupled with West, coupled with modern, identity is coupled with East, coupled with traditional. So identity, those social scientists who defended or thinkers who emphasized identity, they emphasized religious identity, Eastern identity, traditional ways of doing as an identity, whereas those who emphasize survival aspect, they emphasize borrowing from the West or competing with the West, learning and surpassing the West, or the modern, So survival is possible this way. Sociology became a popular field of knowledge in the late Ottoman and early Republican period, and employed by intellectuals with the intention of finding solutions to the problems which emanate from these dichotomies. Post-war, the First World War, Turkish sociology continued to deal with the same question. In this period, sociology in Turkey was divided into two groups, as structure-oriented, the survivalists became structure-oriented, and this structure-oriented school is in Ankara language, history, and geography faculty, sociology, became more structure oriented, whereas those sociologists who emphasized identity became culture oriented. The former tried to tackle the survival identity double bind by diminishing the category of identity into a dependent variable. Independent variable being survival, industrialization, urbanization, development of science, technology, universities, whatever. And identity being dependent variable, that is, it will develop and it will be transformed on the conditions of urbanization, transformation of agriculture, industrialization, dependent variable. The former, the survival structural approach, tackled the survival issue by diminishing the category of identity into dependent variable and formulated a scheme of modernization on the basis of future-oriented cosmopolitan identity. The latter preferred to connect the fate of the intention of preserving traditional qualities of society to the success of modernization process and turned the struggle for survival into a project for restoration of cultural identity. Restoration. Instead of transformation, restoration of rebuilding, but the previous model, the traditional model, rebuilding the traditional model, the Eastern model. And then Mühürdaroğl says this study will analyze these two schools, which set the main course of modernization debates in Turkish sociology. Okay, so let me send this away. And now, again, I am face to face with you. And as I have already discussed with you in the previous 2 weeks, one of our references is this 2-volume book. Let me show it to you again. And of course, we will choose some from it. Now, again, let me show it from here. This one. Remember this book. I hope that you will be able to find this book in the first volume. The names already I mentioned: Ahmet Cevdet Pasha, Ahmet Rıza Bey, Said Halim Pasha, Bedi Nuri, and then of course Ziya Gökalp, Prince Bahattin, and again in this volume Hilmi Ziya Ülken, Ziyaettin Fahri Fındıkoğlu, and then Niyazi, Berkes, Beyice Boran. And the two schools will be covered as when we focus on Ziya Gökalp and Fındıkoğlu and Hilmi Ziya Ülken, it will be more the identity issue, the cultural restoration of the culture under the transforming forces, whereas Niyazi, Berkes and Beyice Boran will adopt more structural survival part of the paradox, of the dichotomy that Turkish society faced or continue to face, and the others, the combinations of these two approaches. We will see all of these in the following weeks. Okay, let me send this to